Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and we are continuing our conversation with author Michelle Chudy. She is the author of Song of the Barren, Miscarriages to Miracle. We had her on a couple months ago. If you happen to miss that program, she's actually with us 3 programs on that powerful book that just came out last month. I would encourage you to go to our website, hopeishere.today, and you can listen to those. It was back in the middle of March, I believe, but you can find that, Michelle Chudy. But today, yesterday we started a conversation with Michelle about a book that she wrote before the Song of the Barren called The House of You. And it's looking how God has wired you up on the inside. And she kind of compared it to a house, and just obviously with the house, everything keys on the foundation of the house. And so if you miss that, I would encourage you once again, you just go to our website, catch that. Our podcasts are only 14 minutes long. So for some of you on a ride to work or before you go to bed at night, or I know one friend of mine, he listens to them while he gets ready in the morning, but you can catch those podcasts and catch the one we did with Michelle. But Michelle, where we left off, you in your book, you talk about there's 7 critical components that help us wisely build the house, which is the temple inside us, or that God has built us all with. Share let's go through those 7 things. We'll just kind of take our time and go through that and spend our whole program today sharing about those. What's the first one?
Well, the first is the relationship foundation, which is basically everything poured on a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that is the salvation covenant.
Well, we all, we do Hope is Here, and we want to encourage everybody, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. But the main reason we did this is because we believe that all hope starts with that relationship. And until you really kind of get that relationship right, I had a teacher one time that showed me, he pointed up toward the sky, I said, it's amazing when I get the relationship right, and he pointed towards heaven with God. It's amazing how, and then he started pointing his hands, horizontally, saying how all these relationships down here get so much better. Have you found that to be true in your life also?
Oh, most definitely. I really believe that if you have that relationship secure, that it impacts every piece of your life. And I even wrote about that in the book, that in a builder's world, it's called compounding defects. If you have that foundation off by even just, the smallest, measurement, it will cause a greater defect the more that you build upon it. So to me, the foundation, if you don't have that right, you're going to have issues in all areas of your life.
Well, and, obviously the most important relationship is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and surrendering your one and only life. But yet, also, I think things that, can cause a lot of detriment to us building our house on a good foundation is, I think, I know at times in my life I maybe have one friend that, if I was honest, was probably, having more influence on me than me having influence on them. And I think sometimes we have to be wise about some of our friendship-type relationships because, are we being the influencer or are we being influenced? Have you found that to be true in your life also?
Oh, most definitely. I actually had a really awesome memory that came up when you were talking about that. This is, of course, my younger years. And the last time that I went roller skating, it's kind of like when you're building on that foundation of Jesus, which is solid and it is not moving, but you still have maybe a foot in the other world as far as like influencing or influencers on you that probably aren't so good. I actually went roller skating where I had one shoe or skate where the wheel fell off. So one was rolling and the other one was standing still. And so in order to do anything, it was very precarious. And I think that's the same thing when you are in a situation where you're not being the influencer and basically having an impact for good on people and you're allowing them to influence you. You can be unstable just from that situation alone.
Yet the thing I do want to say on the flip side of that, I think followers of Jesus also have to be careful of just getting in their holy huddles because obviously Jesus didn't just hang out with the people that were, religious. He went and met with the tax collectors, the prostitutes and things. But I just see so many times with people, I know friends, and I even know in my own life when I coached at Western Kentucky University and I was around all the guys that coach were mainly from the north, and yet there's a lot of profanity they use, and they used it, some couple words just very common, not in front of, a lot of people, but amongst us. And I found by the end of the first year one day, and I was really upset, a word of profanity came out of my mouth that I really never use this one word at all. And all of a sudden, I didn't think anybody was around when I did it, Michelle, so I thought I had my little secret thing going on. And then one of the guys came in, he was from New York City. He goes, "Holy moly, Greg, you must be really upset. I never heard you curse like that before."
Oh.
And so it was the influence of the relationships that I had been in for over a year with them. And so it was just that great reminder to me of the influence, but also just because I didn't think anybody was looking, actually somebody was. So.
Exactly.
And we've all been there. All right, well, we're talking about those critical components of building the house of you. We're talking with Michelle Chudy. She wrote a book called The House of You, and just getting a firm foundation for your life, figuring out God's purpose and plan for your one and only life. The first two we talked about are a relationship foundation. We also wanted to talk about spiritual gifts. And the cool thing about that, Michelle, is that so many people have different spiritual gifts, yet the Bible tells us that, man, we need all of them, don't we?
Exactly. Well, for the body of Christ, yeah, we need definitely all of those gifts to work together, because that's how we actually bring heaven down to earth, and we release the power of Christ through those gifts that are given to us. And that you're spot on. We don't all have every gift. You may have one, or you may have 10, and I may have like one, or I may have like 3. We each have a gift. Some have more, and more often than not, people are given more than one gift, but they're all different, and that's the beauty of it. So you need each other in order to perform the work that God has given us as the body of Christ. We can't do it by ourselves. We're meant to work together. And the other thing, there's obviously we focus on spiritual gifts, but one of the ways that we can find some of our gifts, and I heard you talk about this in an interview that you did recently. There's a really good book called Strengths Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath that came out, and I know you speak highly of that. I do. As a matter of fact, when you go through the House of You and you look at the graphics that I put in to help, really bring the teaching points home, that if you look at how a house is built from the foundation to the flooring and then the framework, you can actually make that same jump to the gifting and basically the skills and the strengths that the Lord has put inside of us as well. And what I found with my corporate side is that Strengths Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath is brilliant. It literally goes through the process of identifying what you do well. It takes your strength themes, and it's basically your talents in your top 5 that you do so well that you do it nearly to perfection, and you're very consistent in how you deliver these top strengths. And that is what I unabashedly recommend, that as you're on this journey to find out what God has instilled in you, to use resources that are available. Again, pulling out the great pieces of wisdom and just gleaning from these resources and using that to help you walk out the discovery process. And Clifton by far has been one of the best tools that I have seen in my 28 years in the business world. Well, and I love it too. I've actually done it a couple of different times. I did, I guess, the first one that came out a few years ago, and then I've done this one recently, and it was spot on. And yet at the same time, it helps affirm things. And yet there was one that kind of like, oh, I didn't really think about that, but yeah, that's true. That is kind of how God's wired me up. So I really recommend Strengths Finder 2.0 by Tom Rath. And obviously, you said that you give a chance and opportunity for people in the book, The House of You, to kind of expose, try to figure out what their spiritual gifts are. And sometimes I love what you also talked about in the book and the interview I heard recently that you did, that sometimes it's just good to ask our close friends or family what they see that we have as gifts. Oh, most definitely. This is a discovery process, and again, you're mining the gems from within you. And sometimes you lose perspective when you're doing it on your own. You have filters, whether you have put on blinders yourself or people have said things that have caused you to skew your vision. When you have somebody that has perspective that can show you things that you can't see about yourself, it's great to look at these peer reviews, just asking people for feedback. You can do everything from going to performance evaluations if you have those from work. But, there are a lot of resources for you to pull from in order to glean those insights to find out what you do well. And you're going to hear it. You get compliments, throughout your life on things, people notice about you. You may not think that you're good at something, but people will call you out on it because your gifts, bring you before, great people. It says that in the Word of God, that they'll call you out. So just look for those compliments.
Well, it's interesting, we talk about that with other people, and sometimes God gets us out of our comfort zone through somebody else. And I had a friend of mine named Wes, an older gentleman that kind of mentors me some since my father passed away a couple years ago. And he talked about when he was in, I believe it was a Lions Club or Rotary Club. I can't remember which one. But anyway, the guy that was the president of the chapter that year was actually his pastor. And they had a newsletter that came out monthly. And the guy that had done it before actually had moved. And so they needed somebody else. So the pastor asked him to do it. And Wes was a pharmacist by trade. And so he's like, yeah, that's kind of my comfort area. I'm a numbers guy and medicine and things. I'm not really a writer. I like sciences and things like that. And so, but it was his pastor, so he didn't want to let him down. So he said, sure, I'll do that. And so he had to spend a lot of time writing this little article. They wound up posting in the newspaper, but as he got out of his, being fearful of doing it, he actually started enjoying it and winds up, he kept doing it. And now he writes a weekly newsletter, goes out to over 500 men 20 years later. So it was a gift that he had of writing that he didn't even know, but because God asked somebody to get him to do something, it got him out of his comfort zone. So it's kind of cool how God can do that, isn't it?
I actually laugh at that because that is, spot on. I love how God does not allow you to just stay hidden. He literally will call things out of you. And just what you described about that, your mentor, same thing for me with radio and webinar. My thing is basically if I can hide behind a computer and write, that would be my preference. But the Lord has put me in situations where I am now an international business trainer, and I do live webinars for an organization that reaches 122 countries. And would I do that on my own? Definitely not. But it's something where I had a coworker basically put me into that situation, and I'm thriving in it, and I'm loving it. So I think when you trust people and they are calling you into an area, even if you're not comfortable with it, you need to just go where the Lord is blessing and walk into those areas and trust that the Lord's going to keep you and call you up to higher levels.
And the great part about this, Michelle, is, for you, this didn't happen like in your 20s or early 30s. I mean, the things I think sometimes as we get older, and I know I'm older than you and I'm at 53, but yet, God is still teaching me things and showing me things that I can do and he wants me to do to bless others. And so some of the gifts that you're using now, it's, God just exposed those to you in the last few years. Is that correct?
That's true, but I have to laugh. I hope you're better at going into the higher level than I am because I've always gone kicking and screaming. So I've not always been one that's, so willing to let go because you get comfortable in your competency. And that's something that where he has moved me into levels where I didn't think that I wanted to go. It's always been something that I wouldn't say it's necessarily been fearful, but it's definitely been uncomfortable. And it's been going on my entire life, but yes, I just turned 50, and I can tell you the last 10 years have been probably the most growth that I've had spiritually, and the most challenging years that I've had spiritually as well, and also physically.
Wow, can't believe we only got through 2 of these, but the good news is we've got one more program left, and Michelle's been willing to stay with us another day. So we're talking with Michelle Chudy. She's the author of The House of You, and it's built for a purpose, structured for God's plan for each and every person's life. And it really has blessed me when I read it. It's only 8 chapters, but there's lots of good stuff in it. So I encourage you to just Google her name, Michelle Chudy, and you can order it there, or you can go to Amazon.com and order The House of You. But we'll continue talking about these critical components that help build your house of you tomorrow on Hope is Here. I'm Greg Horn. We'll see you tomorrow on Hope is Here.
CMI is your full-service human resources provider in Central Kentucky. For 15 years, CMI Human Resources has taken great pride in helping organizations and people work. Whether it's employee handbooks or help in filling a position, no job is too large or too small for CMI. Contact the professionals today at CMI Human Resources, 859-296-2800, or online at cmiconsulting.com.